Have you ever wondered why a generation raised with the belief that they were special, full of limitless potential, ended up growing into such deep exhaustion and skepticism? They grew up with very clear promises: study hard, follow your passion, try hard enough, and a stable life will come. But when they stepped into adulthood, what they encountered was a world operating by completely different rules. Not because they did something wrong, but because the context changed faster than any generation before them had ever experienced. I'm talking about the millennials, those born between 1981 and 1996. If you're wondering what truly happened inside the inner world of millennials, comment number 1 so we can explore this story more deeply together. What's strange is this: many people in this generation don't feel like they've failed. They just constantly feel like they're never enough. Even after studying seriously, working hard, and continuously upgrading themselves, there's still a lingering sense of suspension inside them, as if life is stuck at an invisible waiting point. Psychology calls this cognitive dissonance, the moment when what we were promised collides head-on with a prolonged reality. When effort no longer guarantees results, the brain doesn't ask what's wrong with the system. Instead, it turns inward and begins to doubt the self. And it's this quiet, persistent self-doubt that wears millennials down the most. Not loudly, not dramatically, but slowly and relentlessly. But what happens when that promise collides head-on with reality? That moment isn't loud. There's no clear sound of collapse. Just a strange feeling that appears very slowly. You did everything right. You studied hard. You worked seriously. You kept striving to move forward. Yet the outcome doesn't look like what was once promised. That is cognitive dissonance. The beliefs planted very early in life no longer align with the adult world. Many studies show that collective ruptures, such as the 2008 economic crisis, broke the link between effort and reward. And when this happens on a large scale, people don't just feel uncertain about the future, they begin to doubt themselves. But what happens when two truths exist side by side and cannot be reconciled? When you've done everything the way you were taught, studied hard, kept striving without pause, yet life still doesn't move forward as promised. Psychology calls this state cognitive dissonance, when the mind is forced to hold two conflicting beliefs at the same time, one shaped by expectations planted early in life, the other by a reality that repeatedly contradicts them. Research shows that when this dissonance persists, people don't just feel disappointed, they begin to question their own worth. Not because they failed, but because an old belief system no longer fits the world they're living in now. When this cognitive dissonance drags on, it doesn't stay confined to thought. It slowly becomes a crock in one's most basic trust in how the world works. Psychology calls this a breakdown of cognitive schemas, when the rules taught in childhood no longer function in real life. You do everything right, yet the results still don't come. And when the world stops following its familiar logic, people often turn that confusion inward and begin to doubt themselves. Many studies on chronic stress show that this state keeps the brain in a constant state of high alert, as if something is about to collapse, not because there is a clear danger, but because certainty itself has disappeared. When old belief frameworks stop working, what fills the space they leave behind? For many millennials, the answer isn't reassurance, but comparison. Social media arrived at precisely the moment when they were most uncertain, turning every life into a public scoreboard. You're no longer just living, you're expected to prove that you're living the right way. Psychology shows that constant exposure to carefully curated images of success increases feelings of personal failure, even when there's no concrete evidence to support it. Research on social comparison suggests that the more people measure their worth through external validation, the higher their levels of anxiety and self-doubt become. Instead of offering direction, these comparisons deepen the sense of being lost. And then, when social media arrived, that pressure didn't disappear. It simply changed shape. No one tells you outright that you must succeed anymore, but every day you're exposed to hundreds of versions of other people who already have. Someone younger than you buys a home. Someone your age gets promoted. Someone you once studied with now lives the life you believed would be yours. Psychology shows that constant comparison and an environment with no stopping point leads the brain to interpret failure as a personal flaw rather than the outcome of circumstance. When everything is on display, you're no longer just living. You're also required to prove that your life is good enough. And when self-promotion becomes a constant state, what actually happens inside your body? Psychology shows that the issue isn't only in the mind, it's in the nervous system. When you're continuously on alert for opportunities, comparisons, and the fear of falling behind, the body shifts into prolonged stress mode. It's like waiting for something about to happen, yet it never does. Research on chronic stress shows that this state leaves people exhausted even when they aren't doing anything especially demanding. Not because you're weak, but because your body has been forced to adapt for too long to a world that keeps asking for more than it can reasonably sustain. And when the body has to remain in a state of prolonged tension like that, what happens next? Psychology shows that this isn't groundless anxiety, but a natural consequence of living too long in an unpredictable environment. When rewards are no longer proportional to effort, the brain gradually learns to stay on constant alert. Many studies indicate that chronic stress erodes the internal sense of control and safety, leaving people exhausted even in the absence of any clear crisis. So feelings of fatigue, skepticism, or loss of motivation don't mean you're weak. They reveal a nervous system that has been bracing itself for far too long just to adapt. Beneath everything discussed so far, perhaps the most important point to clarify is this. The reactions many millennials carry are not signs of weakness or lack of effort. Psychology shows that when a generation grows up with clear promises, then repeatedly witnesses economic, social, and workplace systems collapse or change too rapidly, the brain is forced to adapt through anxiety, hypervigilance, and self-doubt. Research on prolonged stress indicates that these patterns are survival responses, not personal failures. So maybe the problem isn't that you're not good enough, but that you've had to live for too long in an unstable environment. If you recognize yourself here, leave a comment so we can find each other.